All right, what's up, guys? Hooked on Football podcast. We are back for episode 3 today. We're gonna be looking at all things football. We're gonna be breaking down a little bit of week 2 action. We're also gonna be looking at what's ahead at week 3. We also have a couple different hot topics that we're gonna be covering through the show. Just a real quick recap from this past week. We had a crazy week of college football. We had upsets galore. We had Texas obviously taking down Alabama by double digits on the road. We had Miami beating Texas A&M. Washington State upsetting Wisconsin. There was a close one in Lubbock with who was that? Oregon and Texas Tech, obviously, but Oregon ended up pulling it out. And then we had Colorado just doing work on Nebraska. I don't really anticipate this week being that crazy as last week, but I certainly think that there's a lot more interesting matchups than one would think in this week to come. I know the first time I saw the week 3 slate, I was kind of disappointed, honestly, with just the games. But taking a deeper dive, which Michael and I are about to break down here, you're going to see that there's actually a lot more games that should be pretty good. We're recording this on Thursday, so there are a couple that take place tonight. But I mean, Bethune-Cookman at number 22 Miami kicks off tonight at 6:30 Central Time, and then we have Navy at Memphis. That's on ESPN at 7:30. But two not really pretty low profile games except for Miami. But I mean, they should roll Cookman, obviously. But before we get into our first topic of the night, Michael, did you have anything that you wanted to talk about week 2?
Not really related to week 2. It was a fun week, just in the sense that we actually got, like you mentioned, some good matchups and some good games, competitive games. But no, everything's more or less, I think, been hashed out at this point. So
Right.
it was a fun week. This week, like you said, it's a little bit down. Some decent games, but next week, week 4 will be a blast. Ton of good games week 4. Probably one of the biggest weeks I can remember.
Yeah, probably, honestly. Yeah, I'm trying my best not to look past, not quite look ahead yet, but it is very tempting with the games. But our first, and there's our banner I missed. Our first topic, though, we're covering tonight. We're looking at kind of trying to take a deep dive on Notre Dame football, kind of what is going on with them in the national media. I just feel like simply Notre Dame is not getting enough love. I'm not even a Notre Dame fan at all, but I mean, this is a team that really no one is talking about. Yes, they're in the top 10, but each week it seems like they barely go down one spot. I think they went down one spot this week. They are number 9. But I mean, you look at huge college football experts like Joel Klatt. He doesn't even have them in his top 10. There's a couple other experts I've seen on Twitter that completely have discounted Notre Dame. They aren't in their own top 10. I think this is unfounded, completely unjust. I'm gonna give I guess my side here, and then Michael, you can jump in. But so I mean, to start out, you have Audric Estime, and he's the number 1 back in all of college football right now. You have Sam Hartman, who he's thrown 10 touchdowns with no interceptions. You have some of their wide receivers who you have Greathouse. I'm forgetting the other names, but you had Holden Stays, who actually had just a breakout game against when they played NC State. He had 2 touchdowns and he had 4 receptions for about 120 yards. So very solid day, very good day for him. And I just my last bit, I just I don't understand it because they were, especially this past week, I was watching ESPN, watching a lot of college football media, and just everybody talking about how, oh, we better get on this. Like, you need to get on this. This is the upset of the week. NC State +7. And Notre Dame wins handedly, and there's not a word said about it. It just kind of, oh, you go on. I do too. I think it's funny how last year at this time, I mean, Notre Dame there, I mean, they were losing some pretty bad games. They lost to Marshall, and then they got routed by Ohio State. But, you know, everybody was coming for Marcus Freeman's head. Everybody was saying, you know, this is the end. He needs to go. And now that he's winning, there's really no talk about it. I mean, I follow a lot of college football media here on YouTube, on Twitter, and I don't think I've seen one post about Marcus Freeman. It's just kind of like, oh yeah, this is what's expected. They just kind of go away. But as soon as he starts losing, oh my gosh, they're going to be right at his head. So that's kind of my soapbox on Notre Dame. I don't know if you have too much more to add, but I just think their position they're in right now is a little unjust. I think they need to be higher than where they're at, and no one's really talking about it.
Yeah, it's a little surprising just because usually Notre Dame is obviously one of the winningest college football programs ever, a blue blood. So it feels like usually people are complaining because Notre Dame's getting too much attention. For a lot of times it feels like Notre Dame maybe doesn't deserve all the attention they get, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But this year is I kind of felt like the opposite. I mean, they're number 9, and you look through who's ahead of them in the top 25. Number 8's Washington, 7's Penn State, 6 is Ohio State, 5 is USC. I mean, I would rank them higher. But I guess it doesn't feel, I don't know, when you look through those teams, it doesn't feel too horribly outrageous. All I would add, doing some research on Notre Dame, though, is they do have, so offensively, they've got the number 21 offense in the country right now. And from a yards per game standpoint, just about 486 yards per game. The number 12 scoring offense in the country at 47.5 points per game. And then they have the number 7 defense, only giving up 223 yards per game. Now, they haven't really played anybody very good, right? They went on the road. What's that?
I mean, yeah, I think what you're about to say, the last game, I mean, that's a Power 5 team.
Yeah, no, I was going to say.
Super hard place to play.
Minus NC State. That was a decent game. We'll see how good NC State is or isn't this year. I think they kind of struggled through their week 1 opponent, but yeah, I mean, it's hard to say that early in the season. So we'll see. No, that is certainly like, I think, for instance, that's a lot better win than USC's win over Stanford last week. I mean, I don't think anyone thinks Stanford is going to be very good. And that's where I was just a little surprised with, so USC's number 5. Now their offense is awesome. Their offense currently is averaging 581 yards a game, number 5 offense in the country, but their defense still sucks. I mean, the numbers are slightly better from last season, but they've played a terrible schedule so far. They're still giving up almost 400 yards of offense a game. So it's kind of interesting. And then I actually found this rankings. It's Power Rankings Guru, .com or something like that. Anyway, he had a kind of a cool ranking system. It was based off of all the games played so far this year, what their ranking would be based off their current strength of schedule. So, I mean, it's only through 2 weeks for most teams, 3 weeks for Notre Dame and USC. But he had Notre Dame's strength of schedule is 87, which isn't very good, but USC's was worse. It was 92. And I mean, truth be told, 87, 92, that's basically a wash. But point being is Notre Dame's look better. Their offense, okay, it's not quite as potent as USC, but it's right behind it. Notre Dame's got top 10 defense. USC's defense, I was scrolling through. I think I was looking on ESPN. They don't have what rank USC's defense actually is, but it's closer to the bottom than it is the top. We'll just say that. So yeah, here's the thing though, for Notre Dame, they play nobody this week, and then Ohio State comes to town next week. So
yeah, just massively.
Yeah, that's the thing is if they beat Ohio State in South Bend, you all bets are off. They'll skyrocket up the rankings. They play USC. I don't really remember. They play USC at some point this season within the next month or two. So they're gonna have a chance to climb. Because I agree. I am surprised people are overlooking them. I think they're better than a lot of people are giving them credit for. But the nice thing is they're gonna get a chance to prove it too, because they're gonna play. I mean, like I said, they have 2 top 10 teams on their schedule at the moment, so they're gonna get an opportunity to prove themselves.
But I do have a question. I thought of one when you were talking about that. If Ohio State, or not Ohio State, if Notre Dame beats Ohio State, do they enter the top 5? Do you think
they should?
I know my answer. Okay.
Yeah, I would say. Well, I mean, you just go and you look. They might not. I mean, that sounds weird to say, but like the problem is it's like Georgia's up there, Michigan's up there. Well, neither of those schools play anybody through week 4.
They're pinned to the top. Yeah, they're not.
Florida State and Texas. Florida State does play Clemson week 4, so who knows? But more than likely, those teams aren't moving. So really, they have to jump USC. Now, I think if they beat Ohio State, they should absolutely jump USC, because USC is ahead. USC's last half their schedule, it's really backloaded. They have a lot of, I think the last 6 weeks of the season, they play really good teams basically every week, but the first 6 weeks, they don't really play anybody. So I think, they would take I would think the number 5 spot. I don't know if they will though.
Yeah. I don't see how you can have Utah ahead of them, but
yeah, is that what Joel Klatt had?
That's he had Utah. Even I think Washington, you could even put them ahead of Washington, but
yeah, I mean, I think you could probably argue Ohio State, Penn State, Washington, Notre Dame. I mean, shoot, USC's 5. Yeah, I think you could rearrange all those teams if you really wanted to.
Yeah.
Just from what I've seen. But we don't know, like, Penn State. Well, Washington really hasn't played anybody. I guess everybody else has at least played a Power 5.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know what's going on with that. But yeah, I think we'll find out, like you said, pretty soon. Week 4 is going to be the deciding factor. I after week 4, it's going to be crazy to look at the AP top 25. There's going to be some gigantic shifts, I think.
Yeah, I guess so too.
But anyway, moving on here to our week 3 slate of games. I wanted to highlight something before we jumped in. I saw something on Fox Sports. The records versus non-conference Power 5 opponents for each conference. No surprise to anybody. Pac-12 is 6-3. ACC is 4-3. Big 10 3-3. Big 12 4-5. Now, big shocker here. If you didn't notice which one I'm forgetting, or not forgetting, but didn't say, the SEC at 3-6. So the almighty SEC not looking too hot so far to start the year. But anyway, going in real quick to our first game of the day. We have number 7 Penn State is a 14.5-point favorite against Illinois at Illinois. And kind of my 2 cents on this one. I think it's a trap game for Penn State, to be honest. I know you look at Illinois. I watched that game last Friday. Illinois looked atrocious. They looked horrible. They couldn't do anything offensively, defensively. Just they couldn't stop anything. However, I think this is just simply Illinois' MO. They lose games they shouldn't lose. And they play tight with teams they shouldn't play tight with. Play tight with Toledo at the beginning of the year. I'm forgetting last year they lost some really bad games. But then last year they played with Michigan. Honestly, they probably should have won that game against Michigan, but it finished 19-17, just barely losing. So I think honestly it's a trap game for Illinois. Illinois is kind of coming off this just complete embarrassment at Kansas. And I don't know what Bielema does, but I think he gets the guys fired up for these big time games. And the last time you look at when they played 2 years ago in 2021, it was, I don't even remember this, but it was an absurd 9 overtime game where Illinois actually beat Penn State, and Penn State was actually ranked number 7 2 years ago. So kind of the same thing, except the only thing that was different was that it was at Happy Valley. Wait, that's the name of the stadium, right?
Yeah. Well, I don't think that's the name of the stadium, but they call it Happy Valley.
Okay. So, yeah, it was at Happy Valley. In Illinois got the upset. So this time they're playing at Illinois. I don't think there's really that big a home field advantage playing at Champaign, but it is worth something.
Yeah, it's a good point with the overtime game they played a couple years ago, and yeah, I would agree. If I would think Brett Bielema can get his team fired up for this, but yeah, I don't know. When I was looking up some of the stats earlier, Illinois got one of the thus far in the season. They have I think one of the 10 worst defenses in the FBS so far. I don't know. Penn State's offense has looked pretty good. I feel like they've been rolling. They can throw the ball. They can run the ball. So yeah, I mean, you never know, right? Like you said, I mean, they could be looking ahead. They get the whiteout against Iowa next week, which will be a very high profile game on NBC. But yeah, my inclination here would be Illinois has been really unimpressive so far. I know I think they're better than, or they're supposed to be better than their results the first couple weeks, but I think I'd have to go with Drew Aller and Penn State. I just think they've looked really good so far. They've looked really solid, and Illinois has not. So yeah, I agree with what you're saying. I can see what you're saying. Yeah, and I would think Bielema is going to try to get these guys fired up for a game like this, but yeah, it's also just a tough spot. And Illinois really hasn't looked very good. Like I said, their defense, I mean, one of the 10 or 15 worst defenses in the country after 2 weeks. So I don't know how you patch those holes up, especially against a Penn State offense. It's pretty good. Yeah. Is putting up quite a few points.
Yeah. And I think it's worth to mention too, Illinois does not have their stud defensive coordinator, Ryan Walters, as he's at Purdue currently. So I think that was a huge loss for them. I think they're still trying to repair the void there. So I don't know why, but I do like Illinois to cover. But moving on to the next one, we have number 14 LSU playing at Mississippi State. So the Tigers, they're favored by 9.5. From what I've seen, a lot of people like this one to be close. Mississippi State comes off a very close game against Arizona last week. I think it was like 27-24. They won in overtime, so super close, but they pinched it out. But I'm not buying that it's going to be close. I think LSU is kind of a little bit on a revenge tour since losing to Florida State like they did in prime time in front of everybody. I think LSU, they definitely have the roster to do it. They have the guys, Jaden Daniels, who is just a stud. But yeah, I think LSU comfortably covers in this game.
Yeah, I'm kind of on the same page with. I just think LSU's out for revenge after blowing that. Not really blowing, but just losing that week 1 game to Florida State. I did look up. So their game last year against Mississippi State. Mississippi State actually had a lead going into the fourth quarter. They were up 6, and then LSU scored 21 unanswered to win 31-16. So the final maybe is a slightly misleading there, but yeah. And Mississippi State's playing pretty close other years as well, and it's at Mississippi State. But yeah, my natural inclination would be to kind of agree that LSU is, like you said, kind of on the revenge tour. I think they know that if they want to get back to the top, they really have to blow some teams out. So I kind of like LSU in this spot too. This feels like a spot for them to show out. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I don't really know much. Mississippi State is. I mean, they had to go to overtime to beat Arizona last week. Does anyone expect anything out of Arizona? I mean, aren't they terrible?
Yeah, no, they're definitely a rebuilding over there with Jed Fish, but they're definitely towards the bottom of the Pac-12. But
That game was at Mississippi State too, I think, wasn't it?
yeah, it was. It was.
So yeah, I don't know. I mean, that seems like a rough loss. Or no, they won, but it seems like a not particularly impressive win. LSU put up like 70 points. I know it was on Grambling State or somebody terrible, but still.
Yeah. Right. They kind of took their frustration out from that first week on them. But moving along here, next game we got number 15 Kansas State, 5-point favorite at Missouri. Not too much information on this game, honestly. I think it's sort of an interesting matchup. We got Big 12 versus the SEC. As far as I know, I think Missouri is they're definitely not at the bottom of the SEC, but they're certainly not towards the top. I think honestly, just looking at this, I think the spread looks pretty right. I do like Kansas State to win this one, but I think it's close, like the spread indicates.
Yeah, it's a big rivalry. And it's at Missouri, which Missouri has a reputation for being a tough place to play. I know they haven't really been that good the last few years.
Yeah.
So when you're not really that good, I don't know how challenging it really is or isn't to play there. But yeah, I don't know. Missouri's results the first 2 weeks have been pretty bad. They beat South Dakota 35-10 and beat Middle Tennessee 23-19 last week. I mean, Kansas State has had 2 just solid wins. They haven't really played anybody any good either. So yeah, I would agree. I don't have a firm take either way. Like I said, it is a bit of a rivalry game, so you never know. Those things can always swing unexpectedly. But yeah, my natural inclination would be to just take K-State here.
Mm-hmm. Next game, we got Iowa State at Ohio. Iowa State coming in as a 3-point favorite. I have looked. This is a lot of experts upset special. They really like Ohio getting the upset. I don't see it at all. I'm not convinced with this Ohio team. I know they had some hype coming into the year with their quarterback, but I do not see Ohio pulling off this upset. Ohio, they lost to San Diego State University. Now this is kind of a little bit of you kind of got to connect the dots, but so Ohio lost to SDSU, who SDSU beat Idaho State by, I think, 8, and Utah State just absolutely routed Idaho State. It was like 78-28. So I actually too, that's who the Hawks played a week ago, whatever it was. They beat them by 10. But yeah, I'm just simply, though, make it simple. I'm not convinced that Ohio is the real deal. I know it's at Ohio, but I think Iowa State, I think they're a tough team. They showed that against the Hawks last week, and I think I would feel very comfortable taking the 3-point spread here.
Are we gonna do anything with the best bets for the week, or should I just throw it in now?
Yeah, I would throw it in now.
Because I had the total on this game was 45 points.
Oh, I didn't even see that.
Over under was 45 points for this game. It was right when it came out on Sunday. So I immediately bet the under on that because Iowa State. So first off, Ohio played a week 0 game. So combined, these teams have already played 5 games. Neither of the teams have played a game that went over 45 points.
Yeah.
Iowa State's been under both weeks. So I think the under is like a super solid bet. It's already come down. It's like 42 points last I checked. So people have clearly been betting it down. But yeah, I would agree. I think Iowa State's not good, but I do think the defense is good and the special teams are much improved.
Yeah.
The offense isn't great, but I was looking up Ohio scores. Ohio plays like pretty low scoring games against not great competition. Like, you know, they've been winning some games, but they're winning by scoring 21 points and giving up, 14 or something like that. That's exactly the type of game Iowa State wants to play. Iowa State doesn't want to have to score points. So yeah, I know that's been kind of the popular pick is Ohio, but yeah, I would kind of agree. I think Iowa State plays good defense. Like I think their defense is going to be on. If the special teams continues to look as good as it has the last couple of weeks, I think they'll take care of business there. And then they're pretty challenged offensively. They don't have any big playmakers, but I don't know. Like Iowa's defense is elite, and they moved the ball okay last week. You know, like they kind of dink and dunk, and they got a couple nice running backs that can run the ball. So under is my best bet. I don't know. It's really good. I still think I'd like it at 42.5, to be honest. I still think I would take it.
I like that a lot too.
But the line started at 2.5. I don't know. Maybe it's been 3 all week, but yeah, I think I like Iowa State too. Matt Campbell's a really good coach. I think he'll get the win. I don't think he'll lose at the MAC school.
Yeah. And that's funny you say that, because that's a perfect segue into we kind of have a little a topic built into here around this game. And that was earlier this week. I saw on I think it was Monday and Tuesday, Matt Campbell was trending on Twitter. It was really random. I saw that. But he was trending, and a lot of people just coming for his head after that loss against Iowa. I saw the most common arguments were saying, he's 1-6 against Iowa. I saw people saying that people were loving the argument, like he went 7-5 with Purdy and Breece Hall, who have made their way in the NFL. They've shown they can be NFL players, as Purdy's probably a little bit more on the other side of the spectrum, but Breece Hall is no doubt a great NFL talent. But yeah, people were kind of coming for his head. I kind of see both sides to this. I see a little bit with like people coming for his head a little bit, because you look at the controversy this season with the gambling accusations and all the players leaving their team. And you could look at it one of two ways. I mean, you could look at it like, yeah, look at all he's done. I mean, he's played a close game with Iowa. They almost came back to beat them. They beat UNI pretty handily with all these backups. However, though, on the other side, you could also look at it and be like, yeah, well, this is his team, this is his leadership, and all this gambling stuff is happening under his leadership here. So I do see that argument too. But I mean, just to answer the question right there up on the banner, is he on the hot seat? I don't think he's on the hot seat. I mean, in order to go on the hot seat, I think he would have to go like 1-10 or something absurd. But
yeah, I think sometimes people lose perspective that Iowa State's one of the worst historically, is literally probably one of maybe the 5 worst Power 5 schools in the country.
Yeah.
I mean, they're terrible, and they've been terrible for, I mean, I want to say, I looked it up before the season. I think they have the 4th worst winning percentage all time of the 69 Power 5 football teams. Point being is, I think people lose perspective at just how bad Iowa State's been historically. And like, so I looked up some numbers. So here's some numbers for you. So since 1950, Iowa State's had 14 different head football coaches. Matt Campbell is currently, his winning percentage at Iowa State is the 2nd highest of those 14 coaches. Earl Bruce has the highest, but to give you an idea, Earl Bruce's winning percentage at Iowa State was 52.9%. Matt's is 52.3. So he's like a couple wins away from having the highest winning percentage in Iowa State football history. Well, that's not true since like 1950, but you can't really count anything before that.
Yeah.
He's got 2nd most all-time wins as an Iowa State head football coach. He's 2nd only to Dan McCarney. Matt Campbell's 46-42 at Iowa State. McCarney was 56-85. So again, Campbell's got the 2nd best all-time winning percentage, and he's won the 2nd most all-time games. He's obviously going to pass McCarney. McCarney only won 40% of his games and like 130 some games coached. Iowa State's only won 5 bowl games in the history of their program. 2 of those were under Campbell. They've only finished in the top 25 3 times in the history of the program. One of those is under Campbell when they finished number 9 in 2020. So point being is, like, Iowa State's terrible. Historically, they're terrible. They're so bad that Matt Campbell has never won more than 9 games. I think he won 9 games maybe once at Iowa State. And he's basically the winningest coach in the history of the program. So, yeah, I get it. They underperformed with Purdy and Brees, and it part of me wonders if there's so many things that happen throughout the course of a season. I have to go back and look. I don't remember if there's injuries, things like that. But to me, Campbell seems to really thrive when he's kind of got a team with its back against the wall. That
I
seems
would
to,
agree with that. Yeah.
yeah, it seems like he just coaches his best teams those years. So
Mhm.
obviously they weren't good last year. I think they finished with 3 wins all year, but they also had like the 9 losses they had. I think 7 were within a touchdown or something like that. So I mean,
Mhm.
they only like handedly lost like twice all year.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, there's a lot. We have to see how this season plays out. But Matt Campbell's got an insanely long leash at Iowa State. They're
Yeah.
terrible. I think anyone with any level of awareness knows they're terrible at Iowa State. So Matt's been a savior at Iowa State. So I know I would not say he's on the hot seat. I mean, sure, yeah, if he goes 1-11, if they don't win another game beyond UNI this year, then
Yeah.
people might start looking around. But I don't think it'll happen. I do think he's a genuinely good coach, and Iowa
Yeah.
State's a historically bad program in NCAA football, and he's gotten them to being a respectable 500 type on, while he's been there. I mean, he's 46-42 in 7 seasons or something like that. So
Yeah.
I think
And
he's a good coach. I think he'll be fine.
but I guess, what do you think though about the whole like gambling situation? Because I saw I actually I saw on game day last year, or not last year, last week, they were talking about how like why is this all, because it was a special segment just about like Iowa State, all the players that are um are getting accused of gambling and getting kicked off the team, and they were like kind of talking about like why is this just happening in Iowa? Um, I guess not to kind of put you on the spot, but do you have any like explanation why you think that's happening at all? Like, do
No,
you think
no.
it's coaching or
Yeah, well,
leadership?
yeah. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, obviously Campbell deserves to take blame for that. He's the head of the
Yeah,
ship, and, he had a bunch of his most important people on the ship go down for, this gambling probe that they obviously should have known better than.
yeah,
Um, I don't know. I've gone back and forth with how much fault you can really put on him, right? I mean, you can
yeah,
preach these, those knuckleheads over and over again, that they can't do it. And then they go and they get on their buddy's phone and they think they're fine and they're doing, you know what I mean? So at a certain
yeah,
point, like, yeah, I do think obviously he deserves some blame for it. How much? I'm kind of undecided on that. Uh, the only other thing I would mention though, with the gambling thing that was really odd is, so if people aren't familiar with the state of Iowa, because if you don't live here, obviously Iowa and Iowa State are the 2 Power 5 schools in the state, but UNI is a pretty high profile FCS school, and Drake is, I don't know what they play in football, but they're Missouri Valley School in basketball. And it was weird. Like, neither of those schools got probed, which everybody just thought was really odd. They just
yeah,
selected Iowa State and Iowa. They didn't touch UNI. They didn't touch Drake. I mean, you're going to tell me that Iowa State and Iowa both had players and no one had Drake or UNI, not a single player who's not even playing as high stakes of football. Nobody was touching that. I mean, maybe, but I find that a little hard to believe. So,
yeah,
yeah, no, I think Campbell, I mean, obviously, like I said, he's the head coach. He deserves some blame. I just don't know, like, I don't know. I've gone back and forth to like what extent, just because he could have preached it, and then again, those knuckleheads go and get on their friend's phone and they think they're being clever, and then they get busted. And, what can you do? I mean, it happened. To be fair, I mean, I know Iowa State's was way more high profile. They had way more, starting quarterback, starting running back, all that stuff get impacted. But Iowa
mhm,
had guys too under Kirk. I know that
yeah,
their guys weren't as high profile, but uh, they still had guys too. But I think the whole thing is just bizarre in and of itself. Again, how they choose to probe, why they chose to probe, who they chose, why they chose to go after who they went after, things like that. It was just all kind of bizarre, and I don't know if we'll ever get to the bottom of why it happened the way it did.
yeah. No doubt, it was a weird deal. But change of pace here. Um, looking at some SEC action. We have South Carolina taking on number 1 Georgia. Um, what I've seen so far, I've seen a lot of people taking Georgia with this spread, that they will cover pretty easily. However, I kind of like South Carolina on this one. Spencer Rattler, he has the third highest rating, and I looked out. It's not QBR, but it's in ESPN. It's third highest rating of SEC quarterbacks. You have Xavier Legette, wide receiver for South Carolina, and he leads Power 5 schools in receiving yards. And you just have some other guys you have like Eddie Lewis and some other guys for South Carolina who are just our guys, and a lot of targets for Spencer Rattler to throw to. However, one of their weakest links is the O-line. Just absolutely atrocious that first week. Rattler was sacked an unbelievable 9 times in the UNC game. And I was watching highlights, and he was getting absolutely decked on some of those. Like, he was making some big time throws, but he would just get absolutely smoked after he threw it. So he was taking some shots, but he still made some throws. And another reason why I think, though, South Carolina can cover this. I think Georgia, they have yet to look dominant in their 2 wins. I mean, they play UT Martin, they win 48-7. I mean, pretty handedly. They play Ball State, they win 45-3 again, pretty handedly. But it doesn't feel like that just super dominant win, and maybe that's just Kirby Smart not wanting to run up the score and kind of preserve his stars. But I don't know, it's just something to me. I think this is a big spread. I think South Carolina definitely has a chance. But my last tidbit here, then I'll let you jump in. I think it could go either 2 ways, and I'm leaning towards the latter here. But I think the former, it could go like the USC game with Stanford, where they play their first conference matchup and just absolutely beat the crap out of them. That's kind of what happened to Stanford USC. Or what I think it's more of a close game. So in this game, I'm going with South Carolina with the points.
Yeah, I'm kind of leaning towards. I think Georgia might thump them. Just because, for what you said, I think Georgia's going to view this as kind of a coming out game. I mean, they literally didn't have to get up for their first 2 weeks. Those teams, they literally could have played. They could have played their third stringers and they would have won. So this is really the first week they've had to get up for a game. So that's where I would think, Georgia's going to come out and look really motivated. They're going to view this as their statement game, because they knew they weren't going to get credit for beating the crap out of those last 2 teams.
Mm-hmm.
It's at Georgia. Georgia absolutely destroyed South Carolina at South Carolina last year. I think they won by like 40.
Oh, yeah.
The only reason I could see South Carolina, the only thing that would make me a little nervous is, Georgia does have that new quarterback, Carson Beck. This is really his first, this will be his first primetime display. He really hasn't played in a high profile game yet. So you never totally know how he's going to respond, but I don't know. South Carolina hasn't really done much to impress me. Like you said, they gave up 10 sacks to North Carolina. North Carolina's defense sucks. They were one of the worst last year. I looked them up again today. Like, their defense is still bottom tier defense after 2 weeks. So
yeah, it's not
yeah. So I don't know. I think I like Georgia here, kind of in a bit of a thought, assuming Beck is like pretty good and like can show out.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to be like Stetson Bennett or something like that from last year, but just assuming he can put together a pretty decent performance, I think I like Georgia in a beatdown. I think Rattler's gonna be scared for his freaking life if North Carolina sacked him 10 times. Like, he might actually like.
Yeah.
I don't know, that Georgia team, that would scare the shit out of me going to play Georgia.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point too. We'll definitely get a better look at Carson Beck for for this game, as South Carolina has a little better D than what they faced. But moving on to a little Pac-12 Big Ten matchup, we have number 8 Washington, the 16-point favorite, against Michigan State. Last year, they did play last year against each other. It was 39-28. Michigan State kind of rallied in the fourth quarter to make it look. I think they had a 14-point quarter, so to make it look a little more respectable. I don't think though this game is anything to get worked up on. Yes, if you're looking at this game on paper, it does look like a pretty good game. I mean, you have a big time team like Michigan State, who has pretty decent reputation, and then you have Washington, who's hot right now with Penix. But I think why it was so close last year. I was kind of looking more at the stats for Michigan State. Michigan State had Keon Coleman, who's now with Florida State. He had a crazy game. He had like 120 yards receiving, like a touchdown. And they also had Peyton Thorne, who threw for I think he threw for like 350 yards. Who's now I want to say Peyton Thorne's at Auburn. I want to say with Hugh Freeze. But I mean, watching Michigan State, I watched them play Richmond last week, and it was an ugly game. Their quarterback, I can't remember his name. Yes, he made some plays, I guess, in the second half. It took them a long time to finally get rolling. First quarter, second quarter were pretty rough to watch. They're going back and forth. But I mean, simply just from watching them, they just simply lack the playmakers. They don't have they don't have a Romeo O'Duns or who's the other guy? I think it's Jalen McMillan at Washington, like probably the best 1-2 punch in NCAA football. So they don't have anything like that. You also sprinkle on top a little bit of the controversy going on with Mel Tucker. Is he guilty? Is he not guilty? It's going to be hard to say that's not going to be a pretty big distraction going into this week. I know you have Mark D'Antonio coming in. I've heard Mark D'Antonio, he's coming in, which I think that could definitely be a good thing. He had a great tenure down at Michigan State. But I mean, just to expect him to come in and change the culture and the team like that, it's not going to happen. So I like Washington big in this one. I don't think Michigan State. I don't think they have the guys to hang with Washington.
Yeah, I think Washington, they would definitely win, even if Mel Tucker was there and all was normal. But yeah, with the controversy with Mel Tucker, it's one of those things like these controversies either spark a great game out of a team like Michigan State and they come out inspired, play for coach, all this stuff, or it inspires a total beatdown. And I kind of feel like, given what the allegations were against Mel Tucker, I don't really know how you totally rally on that. That just seems like a circus clown show all week.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing really to like rally behind, in my opinion. So yeah, I would agree. I kind of feel like this is a potential total blowout spot for Washington. And Washington's looked good the first 2 weeks. Michael Penix has, got his name on the early season Heisman ballot. This could be a spot for Michigan State to Washington to put up a lot of points on Michigan State. Yeah. I would tend to agree with you. I think Michigan State, I think this is a potential blowout spot, just given everything they've had going on. But you never know. It's in East Lansing, 4 or 5 o'clock evening game. So maybe, but yeah, I would tend to lean toward all the distractions, all the controversy, all that type of crap is gonna help Washington.
Yeah, and I mean, Michael Penix, I probably should look this up before I say it, but I want to say he's definitely no stranger to Michigan State. I'm not sure if he played at East Lansing when he was with Indiana, but I mean, he's definitely familiar with that Big Ten territory and stuff. So I don't think that's going to be much of intimidation. He threw for 400 yards too last time they played Michigan State, so they obviously cannot stop him. So yeah. He's going to be a problem for them with his duo wideout. So Moving on to the next one, we have. I do not have a banner for it, but it is Minnesota at number 20, North Carolina. North Carolina is a touchdown and a half favorite against the Gophers. I think this could have the makings of one of the best games of the day because I think Minnesota. I think they do have a pretty solid D. Offense is pretty shaky. But North Carolina, you look, they're kind of the opposite. They have a pretty good offense with Drake May, and their defense, like you said, is pretty abysmal, not very good. So I mean, you mix those two together, sometimes you get an interesting result. I know North Carolina comes off last week barely squealing by Appalachian State, not a great game for them, but that they did get the win. But I think just matchup wise, I think this is one of the best games we're going to see this week.
Yeah, I think so too. This was probably as I'm looking ahead to the weekend, this is probably the game I'm most excited about. Yeah, so here you go. Here, this will back up a little bit of what you were just saying. North Carolina, I looked it up, number 24 offense in the country right now. That's based off of yards per game, so total offense. And Minnesota has the number 8 defense in the country.
Uh-huh.
So, I mean, right there, something's got to give, right? You have literally one of the top offenses, one of the top defenses. And then if you do the reverse, I don't know what the rankings are on these, but North Carolina is giving up 422 yards a game so far, which is terrible. I mean, that's again, bottom feeder. I mean, that's like bottom 25 defense in the FBS. And I don't think I have any stats on Minnesota's offense other than it's just really not very good. So yeah, something's going to have to give. It's at North Carolina, but so I don't remember what the spread was. I remember looking at it. It's like 4 or 5 points, I think, to North Carolina.
I just looked at it this afternoon. It was 7.5
to North Carolina.
Yeah.
Oh wow. Yeah, I don't know. I kind of like. Part of me kind of likes Minnesota a little bit in this spot. Like, I think PJ Fleck is a giant cornball up there, but you can't really deny he's a pretty good coach. He gets his teams up for these types of games. And what time is this game? Do you know? I should know that. Is it an evening game or is it a day kick?
No, it's 2:30 Central afternoon.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if Minnesota actually goes in and win, but I'm just saying if Minnesota went in and won this game, that would not surprise me. I think they would 100% be capable of going in and winning this one. Just because, like I said, their defense is really good. Like I do genuinely believe. I think their defense was a top defense last year. It's a top 10 defense at the moment. So I think the defense is legit. I definitely don't think North Carolina has seen a defense like what Minnesota will have. It's just going to come down to whether Minnesota can move the ball offensively. They've got that new offense, new quarterback. So if they can move the ball, if Minnesota's offense can put some points on the board, like, yeah, I would say look out. Minnesota's just tricky in these spots. They're not the team. If I was North Carolina, I would definitely be a little anxious about this game.
Yeah.
Minnesota's not the type of team I'd want to see.
Yeah, for sure. And I think too, for betting here, I would stay away from the over under at all costs on this one. I would definitely go ahead.
No, what is it? Do you remember? I think it's 51.
I didn't see it.
Yeah,
I was just gonna. I would definitely take the spread or money line over.
Yeah, I'd be inclined to take 51. Honestly, I think I would take the under. 51 points just seems like a lot of points for a Minnesota game.
Yeah.
Here, let me look up what Minnesota they did last week so they beat Eastern Michigan 25-6. So their offense was only capable of putting up 13 points against Nebraska. I think Nebraska's defense is okay, but and then only put up 25 points against Eastern Michigan. So you could add up every score from their first 2 games and they barely get over 51 points total.
Yeah.
And here was the other stat I saw. When South Carolina and North Carolina played, they only scored a combined 48 points. They didn't even reach 51. So And South Carolina is it's not like if you're wondering if South Carolina has a good defense, they don't. So it's not like. So, anyways, I actually really like the under in this spot. I think Minnesota will play good defense. I think they have a lot of pride. I think North Carolina might win, but I don't think they're gonna score 40 points while doing it. And then we know Minnesota's offense sucks, although North Carolina's defense also is known for being really bad. So I don't know. My thought would be under. I just looking at the types of games Minnesota plays. My initial thought would be under.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess we'll see. Moving on though, looking at another SEC matchup, a night game. Number 11 Tennessee is a 6-point favorite at Florida. This game got kind of an interesting take. I could get absolutely slandered for this one, knowing their fan base, Tennessee's fan base. But I think Tennessee is overrated. I've seen on Twitter they have like a cult-like fan base. They just get after people that are. I've seen like people talking down on Tennessee, and there's droves of them that come in, argue with them. But I look at Joe Milton. He's one of the last quarterbacks in the SEC. I think he's just ahead of the Kentucky quarterback. And again, it's not QBR rating, but rating for a quarterback. And they do. I get Tennessee. They do have two really good backs. Jalen Wright, who's averaging almost 10 yards a carry, which is just insane. And they have Jabari Small, who's averaging about 6.2 yards per carry. But I mean, other than that, they don't have any really receivers. They have one receiver in the top 20 for receiving yards in the SEC. Milton isn't exactly killing people with his arm. According looking at the stats. But then, I mean, so on the other side of the ball, though, you have Florida, and it really kills me to pick Florida here, especially after just seeing them just lay an absolute egg against Utah. But they did get their act together against McNeese State, who I just laugh saying it. No disrespect to McNeese State, but they're just a team that like a Power 5 or team that shouldn't be able to hang with a Power 5 school, just due to their resources the Power 5 SEC has. But they won 48-7. So just show me maybe there is a little bit of hope of them coming together here. I know Ricky Pearsall, their kind of stud receiver, had, I think it was 6 receptions, 123 yards last game. Graham Mertz, I think he threw for about 200. So he's obviously a very shaky quarterback. You cannot rely on him at all. But this game, it's in the Swamp, and the Swamp that's a tough place to play. That's a huge stadium, and it's a night game, so they're gonna be rolling. They love their Gators. So and I don't know. In this one, I'm rolling with. I hate to say it, but I'm rolling with the Gators on the spread here.
Yeah, it's a big rivalry game too.
Mm-hmm.
I know there's a rivalry that goes ways back on this one. So, yeah, admittedly I didn't realize the stats I didn't realize those stats he gave on Milton at Tennessee. It's not horribly surprising to me. I mean, I watched him play at Michigan, and I mean, maybe that's not totally fair because I think that was during the COVID season, but he wasn't very good there. So yeah, I think it's a good pick. I mean, I didn't watch Florida's game obviously last week. They didn't look very good against Utah. They didn't look terrible against Utah. It was a little bit deceiving. They just were kind of sloppy, turned the ball over. Utah was the opposite. They were the opposite of sloppy, and they capitalized on everything. But Florida took away some of those like turnovers and stuff like that they had in that Utah game. They actually moved the ball pretty well offensively. They had a ton. I mean, they had several true freshmen that were playing out on the field, their first ever game. So those guys are only going to get better as the season goes on.
Yeah.
So yeah, I could see it. Florida, Gainesville at night, that's a really tough environment. And I think Florida's going to be fired up. Be a great way to get their season back on track by knocking off their big rival Tennessee at home and a ESPN night game. So, yeah, I just don't know enough about Tennessee. Admittedly, I haven't looked into it. They haven't played. Who have they played so far this season? I mean,
I know they played Austin P last week, and that was like actually that was a close game too against
30-13, and then they beat Virginia 49-13. So yeah, I don't know. They just haven't been very impressive. Like, what are you supposed to be really impressed by either of those performances? So we'll see. I mean, this would also be a great statement game for Tennessee if they wanted to prove to everybody they're the real deal.
Yeah. No, yeah, for sure.
So it should be a good game. Like, I'm not quite as fired up about that one.
Yeah.
Probably, watch it, but yeah. I mean, truthfully, it's kind of a sneaky game. That game's probably flying a little bit under the radar.
Yeah. Next one here. This one's a pretty interesting matchup. Syracuse at Purdue. Syracuse comes in as a 2.5-point favorite. Purdue, they're one of those few teams in the in FBS that have yet to commit to a turnover. Like I was saying earlier, they have a new coach, Ryan Walters, who I think he's still kind of trying to just adjust. They had a really bad loss to Fresno State week 1, a really bad loss. But then they come back, they beat Power 5 school in Virginia Tech. They beat Brent Pry over there. He was the defense coordinator at Penn State. This is his first year at Virginia Tech. So they do beat him by a touchdown. I think even Virginia Tech, I'm pretty sure, was favored in that game. So they won by a touchdown. But Syracuse is an interesting team. They're one of two teams with a top 10 offense and a top 10 defense. Their offense, they're ranked third. They're averaging 56.6 points per game, and defensively they're ranked first, and they're only allowing 3.5 points per game. So Syracuse, depending on the result of this game, could be kind of an underrated team right now. I don't hear any mentions of them even coming close to the AP top 25. I mean, that's probably because they played lower tier schools, but obviously they've been handling them pretty well. So I would say though, this is at Purdue. That's a tough place to play at night, but my inch here is Syracuse here.
Yeah, I don't have much on either of these teams, but to back up what you were saying, Syracuse has played Colgate and Western Michigan. They beat Colgate 65-0 and Western Michigan 48-7. So this is really their first test. This is really where, like you said, when you play those scrubs, all you can do is beat them. You probably can't beat them much worse than that. So
yeah.
Credit to them for doing that. But yeah, this is really their first test. Purdue's kind of like a Minnesota. They're just like one of those teams you don't really want to play. They're just now. I know this. They're under their new coach here. It's only his third game, but I think he's going to be a good coach. Like you said, they start the season by losing to Fresno State, and they turn around and they beat Virginia Tech last week. So yeah, I don't know. This will be an interesting game to keep an eye on. What time? Do you know what time this game is?
Yeah, this is 6:30 Central.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I probably favor. I don't know. Purdue's a tough place to play at night. Not that I don't like Purdue Stadium's not like crazy big and it doesn't have a reputation for being like insanely like a crazy environment, but
yeah,
it just seems like teams sometimes struggle when they go to Purdue, like for whatever reason. Purdue just plays well at home. So it's an interesting one. Yeah. You have Syracuse, who's just beat the living crap out of two teams they played. And then you have Purdue, who lost a game unexpectedly, then wins a game that like you said, I think they were underdogs in. So good test for Syracuse and a good test for Purdue to like see what they're actually made of here. Like if they can beat Syracuse in the spot, that's going to be a good win for them. Give them some momentum after that week 1 loss.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that would be a huge win for them if they pull it out. But looking ahead to another night game, we got Pittsburgh at West Virginia. West Virginia comes in as a as a 1-point favorite. I'm a little bit torn in this game because of I think West Virginia, they came in to Big 12 as I don't think anyone thought highly of them at all. I think everyone was thinking they were going to be towards the bottom, and I think they're definitely a little better than advertised this year. However, I really like Pat Narduzzi. He always has a consistent physical team year in and year out. So I think this is gonna be a close one, obviously, as the spread indicates. My heart wants to go with Narduzzi at Pitt because I really like. I'm a fan of him as a coach. However, though, the trends I've been seeing from West Virginia, I think they have it going on a little bit. So this is at West Virginia too. So I would like West Virginia here.
Yeah, West Virginia played Penn State. Penn State was clearly the better team, but they played Penn State decent. They were kind of a scrappy team, and Penn State didn't really run away with it till late. Again, I haven't really watched much on Pittsburgh, so I don't have much in the way of thoughts on them. But yeah, kind of two middle of the road teams. But ultimately, when you're looking at bowl eligibility, things like that, that's both these games or this game is probably big for both these teams. So
yeah, that's a good point.
Pittsburgh's a better program year to year. But like I said, West Virginia has looked decent to start the season. So I agree. I'll go with you and take West Virginia.
And Pittsburgh too. They lost last week against Cincinnati to I think about 6 or 7. So to note that too. But all right, getting down to the end here, we have College Game Day. That is Colorado State at number 18, Colorado. Colorado coming in as a 23.5-point favorite. For me personally, I think it's hard to go against Coach Sanders and the Buffs in this one. Apparently, it's all over Twitter that the head coach, Jay Norvell, is running his mouth at Colorado State. He's saying something about I'm like sunglasses and whatever's how Sanders presents himself. And you see how Sanders turned that around on Matt Rule. I don't really even know. It sounds like Rule made it sound like there really wasn't even like a beef there. It was just kind of a manufactured thing from Sanders to kind of get his guys fired up. So CSU, Colorado State, they played Washington State. I want to say their first week got beat by 25. I think they're gonna be going crazy in Boulder. Stadium's gonna be sold out again. College Game Day's there. I think they get it done at home. I think they cover the spread here.
Yeah. The other thing is Deion Sanders seems to like to run up the score. So
yeah,
which to me, this just doesn't really make any sense. I actually think this, I would like to think that Colorado's going to fix this moving forward. But last week against Nebraska, they were up by like 30 late in that game. They had pulled away. There was like 3 or 4 minutes to go in the game. And Travis Hunter, who's played like over 100 snaps in the game, is still out on the field. And I'm like, why on earth would he still be on the field? Like, this dude has played. First off, why would any starter be on the field in that situation? It doesn't make any sense. But someone who's been playing both ways, who's played over 100 snaps all day, he's in the game in totally meaningless scrub time. Like,
yeah,
Nebraska's down 30 with the game over. So my point with that is Deion, like, when Deion can cover spreads, he's probably going to cover spreads because it appears he doesn't like to take his foot off the gas ever.
Yeah.
I don't personally love that philosophy. I mean, I get to some extent running up the score in certain instances, but I don't think I don't love it in that spot. But I think with all the smack talk, all that type of stuff, wouldn't surprise me to see Colorado really try and run the score up on Colorado State Saturday night.
But anyway, I think that's pretty much all of the games for week 3. There might be a couple bigger ones I'm forgetting. I think like BYU and Arkansas play, which honestly don't know the most about those two teams. I know about Arkansas I know KJ Jefferson's having himself a year. but we won't even go into breakdown that game. But we are arriving towards the end of the show. One of the last segments we're going to do here is Michael and I's top 5 most exciting players. So these are, I base this off of, maybe Michael's is a little bit different, but I base these off players that I personally like. I find out that they're playing and like I want to go watch them. Maybe not necessarily they're putting up the most, like the best. You're not going to see them towards the top of leaderboards and rankings for like statistically, but just kind of players that have that wow factor. They have that it factor. It's hard to say what it is, but it's just something about them. They have that it. So I guess we could. I had it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but I think we definitely got to go by high number first and get into our first one. So, do you have any preference on going like just one by one, or me?
You didn't tell me it was a top 5. I didn't pick 5 guys. I just picked like I think I just picked like 3 guys.
Oh, okay.
So I don't have 3. But heads up, my computer's at like 6%.
Okay.
So do you want me to give my guys really quick? I just have 3 guys I can run through.
Yeah, you go first.
And then I'll let you go through yours. So not in any particular order. I'd had Sam Hartman from Notre Dame, which I mean, he's been talked about a lot. So I don't know. Maybe that's not the greatest pick, but the stats I saw on him, he's got the 3rd highest QBR in the country right now. And then I think you said this earlier, he's thrown for 10 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. And then my second player I had is JJ McCarthy from Michigan, the Michigan quarterback, which I've already said I'm a fan of his, but McCarthy for the season is 48 for 55. That's an 87% completion percentage. That is technically second in the country behind, who was it? Behind Tulane's Michael Pratt, who's completed 14 of 15 passes. So not even close to 48 for 55. Yeah. So McCarthy's got the highest completion percentage really in the country. Like I'm giving him that, over 20 passes, like 14 of 15. I don't really count that. And then he has yet to take a sack this season. Has not been sacked, which some of that's the O-line, right? That's not necessarily completely on him, but it also shows he's making good decisions. He's getting rid of the ball when he needs to, or he's getting out of the pocket, getting away from defenders, things like that. So I've been super impressed with him. Michigan's known for being a running team, but he's thrown the ball really well this year. And then I took Iowa State, Jeremiah Cooper from Iowa State, the DB, tied for number 1 in the country for most interceptions. He's tied with Coastal Carolina's Clayton Isbell. They each have 3 interceptions, which 3 interceptions through 2 games. That's a pretty good start to your season. So I took Jeremiah Cooper. I mean, I'm wearing an Iowa State. I'm not a huge Iowa State fan. I mean, I live in Iowa and stuff, so I follow them, but I didn't know who Jeremiah Cooper was coming into the year, but he's been really good. He was really good against UNI, and he played well against Iowa again last week. So I threw him in there. Defensive player.
Yeah, those are good picks. I was trying to find a defensive player. I guess I kind of have one. But yeah, Sam Hartman, that's another good one too. He could have probably made my list. Mine, I don't have as good a justification as you did. I just kind of based off the eye and just watching players. So my 5th one, I mean, this is gonna be no surprise. Travis Hunter, just very intriguing player to watch. Plays both sides of the ball. I mean, game kind of speaks for itself. Number 4, I had a tie here with A.D. Mitchell and Jatavion Sanders out of Texas. Those players are going to make a killing here in the NFL. Those are some that they're just both outstanding receivers. Even though Jatavion Sanders is a tight end, but still they're both just outstanding. I love watching them. Number 3, I had another player that just kind of wowed me. Seeing his athleticism. I might be a little late to the party here, but Keon Coleman out of Florida State. I think he's just an electric player too. Super fun to watch. Number 2, I had to go with Shedeur Sanders just based off that first game, watching him, just kind of being amazed by what he was doing, throwing for 500 yards. That doesn't happen very often. And just I know he didn't have. I mean, I think he threw for 400 yards against Nebraska, or he was very close. Or I think he was, because I think he's at like 900 total yards or something.
Yeah, I don't know if he threw, or he might throw for like 390 if he didn't throw for 400.
Yeah, that sounds right. But yeah, he's just one of those players that you want to watch right now to see what he does. He could do anything. And my number one by far player that is the most exciting to me in college football is Zachariah Branch at USC. That guy can move. Honestly, he's just one of those players that I don't know what it is, but ever since that, who they play for, San Jose State, and then I actually got to see them. I was up kind of late Saturday night. I was able to see them play in that the Stanford game, and just kind of watching it almost kind of just gives me goosebumps. Just like how quick he had a punt return. I want to say I don't think it was kickoff return for Stanford, and just the way he moves, the guy. He just has that it factor. And I think it's been a while since there's been a player like him. So that's my top 5 of kind of must-see, exciting players.
Yeah, I would agree with those. I was just on a different page. I picked the players that I thought were like, well, when you mentioned what we were going to do, I picked kind of like the under the radar, like who's having a good season or something like that. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't really disagree with anyone you said, as far as like you said you were picking based off who you want to tune in to watch. And
yeah,
I would agree with those guys. I'm probably not admittedly going to like tune in just to watch Sam Hartman or like JJ McCarthy. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
they're having like good seasons statistically, may flying a little under the radar, but yeah, I'm still probably not going to tune in just to watch them. But I probably would tune in to watch a lot of the guys you just said.
Yeah. But in closing here, I actually kind of have a random thought that I was thinking of throughout this video, kind of to sound us off here. But is Luke Fickell in Wisconsin last year's Marcus Freeman?
Yeah, it could be.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
He's just having a tough time adjusting. Right now is a big adjustment period.
Yeah, they have the schedule's pretty good to them. So they have Georgia Southern this week, at Purdue next week, Rutgers at home, Iowa at home. And there's really only one game on the schedule they can't win the rest of the way, and that's Ohio State. Or, they're going to be obviously a pretty decent underdog, I'd imagine, that game, but that's still in Madison. They don't have to go to Ohio State. So, yeah, I would say it's very possible. I'd say very possible.
The hype was real on them coming into the season. People were very high on them, and now that's just slowly kind of dissipated, especially after that Washington State loss.
Yeah.
So,
no, I agree. Hard to say. They didn't look great against Buffalo either, so it's hard to say which way it will go. But obviously, Fickell is a good coach, and there's talent there. So,
yeah,
time will tell. But the schedule's pretty friendly to him.
Yeah. But anyway, I think we reached the end here. So, hey, we appreciate you guys watching. If you're still with us here, make sure you subscribe. We have one podcast coming out every week at the Hooked on Football YouTube channel. Make sure to, if you haven't already, make sure you follow us on Twitter. We are on, what's our Twitter handle? You get us started.
Coming soon.
Okay. All right. Okay. Coming soon on
I'll have it for next week.
Okay. But yeah, please stay tuned next week. Next week's going to be absolutely nuts. If you think this week's good, just wait until next week. It's going to be absolutely insane. So we appreciate you guys watching. We will see you in the next one.